Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I would like to take up the issue, the topic, the inquiry of the nature of the ego. Even though everything we discuss is related to that, today I would like to clarify that how the ego is very strongly connected to the physical body. The physical body has been the result of evolution over many years. This is the current accepted theory, the current evidence that we have for development of life. Whether someone believes that we have evolved from monkeys or some other forms of animal, sometimes I see people questioning that. But I guess we can, on the basis of evidence, at least say that the complexity has increased. There is enough evidence of it in physics as well, on based of entropy, on based of complexity. So from a single simple organism, a single cell organism, to a multi-cell organism, the complexity has gone up. Okay. Now, as the complexity has gone up, the meaning of that very statement in terms of biology is that the simplified form of life has learned how to develop, how to execute complex tasks, and it has happened over a period of time, and that time could be quite long, expectedly billions of years on the history of the planet. So the simple cell organism becoming complex through experimentation, that the organism is trying a certain thing, okay, and then if that thing is feasible according to its environment, if it can find the energy to execute that action, then eventually that gets added to its newer version, and it evolves to a little bit complex form, and then so on, the complexity keeps on increasing. So basically, at the simplified level of life, it was patterns that could repeat themselves, okay, and patterns that were capable of sustaining themselves. At that point, this was intelligence, that those patterns knew how to sustain themselves for a longer time, let's say. Now, as those patterns could sustain themselves, they also started learning how to become more complex patterns. Okay? So, in all this process, what is happening is experimentation is going on in nature. A simple pattern first of all learns how to keep itself going on. Okay? When I say learns, it means it develops information, it develops memory of how to replicate itself or how to keep providing energy for its survival for a longer period of time. And it all has come from the raw material which were already present on the planet. So, in a way, matter is becoming living slowly, step by step. Okay? Now, because matter has slowly become complex and come to the point that we have come to today, we can see that there are so many aspects of matter that we share. For example, all the laws of matter apply also on us. Whether it's the basic famous law of Newton, to every action there is equal and opposite reaction, is also applied to your body. Your body follows that law of matter as any other form of matter. And actually, if you would observe it if you would observe it seriously, you could see even your mind follows that law. Every time someone calls you stupid, the mind reacts to it. Every time someone tells you they like you, the mind reacts to it. So the process of reaction is even going on at the mental level. So all this background story that I have told you about development of evolution is that because the body is the end result of all those experiments over billions of years, okay? For the body, time has become very important because the body has been created over a period of time. Time is kind of engraved in it, okay? All the results of all the experiments that nature has performed, they are all saved inside of us. How does my heart know what to do? How does my cells know what they are supposed to do? It's not by some magic or anything. It's because those functions, those tests have been performed millions or even billions of times over billions of years, and the most refined form has been saved as memory inside of the DNA, and then that information is passed on to the next to keep the survival going. Okay? Now, the pattern which learns to survive, the pattern which learns to self-sustain itself, it learns all that, it becomes very smart, but it doesn't know why it's doing all that. Okay? Before life, let's assume, there was no pattern. There was no life. Pattern means I'm saying life as pattern. So the moment some kind of basic life began, that basic life tried to sustain itself. I think in the beginning it didn't even try to sustain itself, maybe. But over multiple experiments, it came to the point that the memory of sustaining itself was made. And then that memory was passed on. So, even today, we don't know why we are living in a way. Like, people ask all the time, what's the purpose of life? What's the purpose of life? You know? Yeah, and I think that was also because in the beginning of life, there was no purpose of the beginning of life. It just happens. And as it happens here on Earth, there are very high chances that it's happening at many other places in the universe. So all that information is part of us, which the evolution has carried through. And all that information has also developed a system for self-protection. Okay? Physically, and then eventually psychologically. The psychological system is basically developed in order to support the physical system. Okay? The purpose of the ego is to ensure that the body keeps going on, keeps moving on, body gets its best. That's why the ego is always self-centered. It's always selfish. Because the purpose of the ego is to keep the survival going on, to keep the profit going on. Okay? So, in the beginning, when there were no businesses and this kind of stuff, the ego was trying to protect the body by stocking food, finding food, not sharing food with others, and saying, no, I will keep my food with myself because I need to survive longer. In the same way, as now, as life has become a bit more different, where food is not such a problem to some people, unfortunately to a lot of people it is still a problem, but yeah, to the people for whom food is easily available in the shops, the concerns have become different, and that's why the ego is trying to protect the self-respect, the societal image that we have in the society, the money, the progress, this kind of things. But essentially the ego is part of that process of evolution. The simplicity learned complexity and the purpose of survival. That purpose of survival was extended when the psychological capabilities were enabled. At some point in evolution, the brain became complex enough to have psychological capabilities. And when that happened, naturally evolution also used that aspect as part of self-protection, as part of self-survival, and to keep the life going on, to keep the species level things going on. So you would see that most of the behavior of the ego is very like animalistic or like other animals, because it's coming from the nature. It's coming straight from the soil, the trees, and everywhere. That's where the evolution has happened. So the ego is always trying to protect itself, as the animals are also doing. The ego is always trying to create its regions. This is my area, my country, my this, my that. In the same way as the animals do, they pee to draw the line. Okay? And the ego is always trying to look after its family. The ego is always hurt when you lose someone in the family. And you can see these patterns everywhere in most animal species as well. So the ego is very strongly connected to the body. In fact, it is the body. It's just the body is responding psychologically, which is what we call the ego. And which is why it is always trying to protect self-survival, keep going, the species must go on, strong sexual tendencies so that we can have offsprings and the next generation can come. And these are all parts and duties of the ego. So can we recognize this? Because sometimes, most times, I see people being confused about it, that they give the the features of the ego, the tendencies of the ego the the indications of the inside or the deeper. They give the hints given by the ego, the voices heard from the ego, and people call them the sound of the soul or the voice of the soul or something like this. And this is simply because of the fact that they don't observe that it's actually coming from the ego and not from some soul or something, I don't know. So the ego is given a new name, a new version of a more sophisticated version, which sounds nice, which feels nice, and which gives us the right to follow the ego again. Because the body naturally wants to follow the ego, because that's how the evolution wants it. Which is why the psychology is always active, the thought process is always going on, always going on. It's very rare and very hard to see how thought can relax for some time, because it's always trying to protect, it's always trying to create security. So if we could observe this in our daily life, that the whole voices of the psychology, the whole pattern and system of the psychology that we have is deeply connected to the body. It's very materialistic. There's nothing supernatural about it. Okay? And it follows the natural tendency of the demands of the body. Let's put it like this. So if you would observe the actions of the ego over the day, you would see it would do these kind of same things. Where life will be in danger, it will be creating fear to stop you from going at those places. When you see a beautiful person, it will create sexual desires in you and try to attract you towards that person. When there is some nice smell, it will be creating this feeling of desire to be attracted towards that smell and try to taste. So this cycle, this pattern of the ego is deeply connected to the body. So remove the idea of special ego, remove the idea of some kind of deeper voice or something. All voices are of the ego. If there is something deeper, then apparently it does not have a voice. Then at least it doesn't seem to have a voice. Okay? On a very strong and strict evaluation, on a very strict examination, you would see that all psychological voices, all psychological movement is part of the ego, is part of the thought structure. So you cannot just take it for granted that what you felt is some kind of a deeper call which is asking you to do something. Okay? So try to see this. Try to see that the ego's root nature is the body nature, the material nature, and observing the ego gives us countless proofs for that, countless chances to to collect evidence for that. And when the time comes, it's nice to ask the question that is there something beyond this? And when does the time come? If you are totally satisfied with the ego, the way the ego is performing, behaving, then the time never comes. Then you just enjoy the patterns of the ego, the patterns of the thought structure, and life moves on. But if you are observant enough, if you are alive enough, then there comes a point where you see the limitation of this patterns of the ego, the patterns of how the ego wants you to live, how the ego wants you to live in a box, how the ego is so afraid. So all this, when this is visible, naturally the person asks, is there something more than that to life than just this, living with the pattern of the ego? Or it's another way of saying, is there more to life than living with the pattern of the body, the pattern of the matter, the pattern of information, the pattern of memory? Remember, simplified life becomes complex life because it has gathered memory of the years. The memory is those patterns which is going on for billions of years. Your body knows how to do everything, not magically, because there is every part of the body is full of memory in every sense. That memory is telling the body what to do at every instance, in every scenario. Okay? So you ask yourself, is there a way of living which is beyond the movement of memory, which is beyond the movement of this pattern that has been set by evolution, pattern that has been set by the body? And that's when you move forward to ask the deeper questions. So observe the ego, learn about the nature, because then only you see the limitness of that. Then only all the things we have talked about, thought in the last few videos come true. Because then you will see how different shades of thought are, then you will see how the different shades of your ego are working, how they are behaving. So if you're serious, if you're listening, then do this. And when the question is arising, is there something more, then it's nice. Then something more might be there, might not be there. Let's see. But check it, try it. If you will not, then you will not. And there are a lot of people who are not trying to do this because they have already found comfort in the pattern of life that life has offered them. The very definition of life will change. That's the whole point of it. What you think life is right now has to go through a tremendous revolution. The meaning of that word life has to change. If it's the same for you for many years, then you are in the pattern for sure. So try this, and let's meet next time. Thank you.